Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. I'm excited to have everyone here today. My name is Brad Vierig. I am the Associate Dean at the University of Utah. I've got a long career of working in industry in a chief financial officer position, in addition to teaching corporate finance on campus and running our wonderful executive education and MBA programs. And I want to welcome you all here and thank you all for attending today. I think you're going to really enjoy this session we have prepared for you. This is a difficult time, as we all know, and in this time of uncertainty, I think it's very important to increase your knowledge, increase our skills, and obtain greater confidence to new ideas and new leadership and new thoughts. And I think that's one of our purposes today. Being a strategic leader is very important, especially now in this time. Every organization depends on leaders throughout its organization to be thinking and behaving more strategically. In fact, if you look at the news this morning, you might have seen Walmart's press release and you might have seen Target's press release. Both retailers came out with phenomenal sales, up 10%. One of the things you'll notice if you drill down in what happened this morning is that Target had flat store sales for their existing comparable store sales, but a significant 141% increase in their online sales and their shop to the store to pick up. And that's a really good example of thinking strategically. Many years ago, Target made the decision to really think about the future of how consumers shop. And they moved over to purchase and acquire and grow their online program, their online capabilities. So when the pandemic hit, they were well positioned to take advantage of the market, and they will clearly be a survivor. At the David Eccles School of Business, we were very fortunate to do the same thing. About 5 or 6 years ago, we launched online MBA, which is now the top 11th ranked program in the world. And with that capability, our faculty, our staff, and our technology, we're ready for this pandemic, and we're able to move most of all of our executive education and all of our degree programs online, and not just online, but in a blended learning format where you get a chance to have synchronous and asynchronous learning. And it's not just an online program, but it's a very, very different experience. And I hope you'll look to us in the future. In today's webinar, we'll be introducing you to the 6 principles of strategic leadership. You'll also learn what you should be doing now and how to prioritize some of those things to create value for your organizations. For a deeper dive into this topic in the future, we have Dr. Gorman and Dr. Todd Zanger teaching a 2-day course, both live and synchronous and asynchronous learning, blended learning as we call it, on June 25th and 26th. We encourage you to register and participate in the program if you're looking for more information after today's strategic leadership overview. I would just want to encourage everyone online that you have a Q&A feature and a chat feature on side of YouTube. If you would like questions answered from Dr. Gorman at the end of our program, please feel free to go in and open those chat. We have staff looking at those and reviewing those, and we're happy to evaluate those and get those to Professor Gorman at the end of her session and be able to answer as many of those as we have time for today. And with that, I would like to now turn over and introduce Dr. Gorman to you. And Dr. Gorman is the Managing Director of the Goff Strategic Leadership Center at the David Eccles School of Business here at the University of Utah. She holds a faculty appointment in the Department of Entrepreneurship and Strategy. As a consultant and professor and author, Patricia is passionate about bridging the gaps between the classroom, the tea room, and the boardroom by helping individuals and organizations build their strategic leadership skills. Her recent research and consulting has focused on strategic agility in changing environments, developing high-value growth strategies, and disruption in higher education. And I think we're experiencing that right now in our economy. Patricia has published in the McKinsey Quarterly, the Harvard Business Review, Forbes, the Deloitte Review, and co-authored a book that's used in many business schools, What I Didn't Learn in Business School, co-authored with Professor Jay Barney, and that was published in 2010 by Harvard Business Review. And with that, I'd like to thank you again for joining us. We look forward to a great discussion, and I'm going to turn the time over to Professor Trish Gorman. Trish, thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to be here, and thanks to all of you who've joined us today. I'm just going to share some slides. I don't want to be too slavish to those, but sometimes it helps to have a bit of material that we can all focus on together. As Brad said we're going to be focusing on an overview of mastering strategic leadership. I really appreciated that very kind introduction, Brad. I've spent a considerable amount of my time looking at disruption in higher ed, but also being part of the educational community, working at a number of different schools. And I was very fortunate to be invited to join the University of Utah team a few years ago. The reason I came was to work specifically with the Goff Strategic Leadership Institute. And much of what I'll share today is also supported by the center and by a much larger team than you see here right now. I've been very privileged also to spend a lot of my time in my career as a consultant, helping people build skills, solving difficult problems. But I think we're facing an unusual level of turbulence, volatility, uncertainty, and the demand for strategic leadership skills has never been higher. So let me get into some of our content right away rather than spend more time on background. I do want to say that we're very serious about responding to your questions and tailoring today's experience to some topics that you may want to bring to the fore. I know there are people on today from service industries, retail, restaurants, energy, tourism, and whatever you're facing in your own strategic leadership. If you can share it, we'll do our very best to tailor some of our responses today to your situation. One other thing I do want to point out is, as Brad says, your past investments really do determine how well you're able to navigate today's realities. Strategy is always something that you're making investments today for tomorrow. And one of the things that I did that I had no idea would be so useful is at one point, I was invited by Jack Welch to leave Columbia Business School and to work with him and a small team to build a 100% online business school. And that experience of building that online school and getting it accredited, and then we went on to sell it, has really proven to be quite useful now as virtual learning, online capabilities, and kind of these new ways of transferring knowledge have become so much more important. So as we're going through today, try to think of some things that may be somewhere in a past investment that you or your team or your colleagues have made that you can twist in a new way and find opportunity in the difficulties that we're facing. I'm going to start today by talking about what strategic leadership is. Then I'm going to get right into some things that you can be doing right now. Things that are not very costly, not very difficult, but could have meaningful positive impact on the value of your business. The last topic I'll get into is how you prioritize, because right now there are many things that you could do, many things that you should do, other things that you might do. You may feel some urgent pressure in some areas. So prioritizing based on value is one of the hallmarks of really effective strategic leaders. And that will be the topic we close on before we open up for a Q&A. Okay. So leadership, it's about motivating and inspiring others. When was the last time you inspired someone else? And not just to do anything, but when did you inspire someone else to make a significant investment to create real value or impact? And really think about that, because this shouldn't be a once in a lifetime occurrence. For strategic leaders, it should be a very common occurrence. Motivating and inspiring others, no matter where you are in the organization. So I can be pretty sure from past experiences that some of you, when I ask this, are saying, well, when I get to be CEO, then I'll inspire people. If I get a few more rungs up the ladder, if I have more responsibility, if I have a bigger staff. And I want to say no, right now, from where you are, in the domain where you have some influence, where you have some ability to make change or to continue to double down on what's happening already. How can you inspire and motivate others? Okay, because that's what true strategic leadership is. Strategic leaders are those people at any level and any position in the organization who inspire and motivate themselves. And motivating yourself might be rather difficult in times when now you might be working from home or juggling, your children who are taking their classes from your living room. But you motivate yourself and also others. And why? Because you want to achieve a future-focused, risky goal. And what does that mean? It means it's strategic. You're doing things today that won't have real impact until tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. And why are those goals risky? We don't mean irresponsible risk. We mean the risk that's linked to reward, taking appropriate risk so that you can actually achieve these returns. And some of the ways we do this is by setting pace. Maybe right now you're holding off on some investments, waiting for more information. Maybe you have to move more quickly. Pacing is a big part of leadership, directing resources. Where are your own energies and the energies of your team going? Are you focusing more on customers' needs and maybe future needs? Or are you focusing more on your technology? Where are you directing your own and others' resources? And how are you making meaning? What stories are you telling yourself and others? Are you saying there's going to be a swoosh recovery and you're preparing for that? Are you expecting some of your competitors to really struggle and perhaps even leave the industry? Are there ways you can change the way you work? And I smile because we did not create this change the way work is done for today's environment, but it really does apply now. So strategic leaders in many ways are very similar to both strategists who are creating value for the future and leaders who are motivating and inspiring others. But strategic leaders have a relentless focus on that value creation piece. Strategic leadership is not just about you, but it is importantly about you. Without a strong core, without a strong feeling about what you bring, you won't be as effective as you could be in strategic leadership. So we don't just look at you. Our model has 3 dimensions. We look at you, we look at the role you play when you work with others, and then importantly, we focus on the goal, the why. We like to say, what good is an archer without a target? And many times leadership training and skill building helps you to become stronger, to develop that skill to perhaps be, in this case, an archer. But the strategic part of strategic leadership gives you that value-based goal that you're shooting for. Your core is who you are. So when you take inventory of your current skills, your mindset, if you have a mindset of growth and abundance, if you're more risk averse versus risk taking, the behaviors that you practice every day, and the potential you bring. So our center focuses quite a lot, especially with young students and people early in their careers, on ensuring you have a strong core. And it's never too late, no matter how senior you are in your career and your own journey, to go back and make sure you have a strong core. But your role is more what you might expect us to talk about in leadership. That's how you interact with others, how you demonstrate your leadership in a group, how you get things done with teams. And we like to focus on not just what you do, but what others deserve to get from you. And that might be your integrity, your reliability, your trustworthiness, your honesty, your ability to accept failure on your way to success, both formally and informally. So as I said, you can be a strategic leader at any level in the organization, but sometimes you do have a formal role to play. And in other times you're stepping into a leadership role that's more informally crafted. Your goal is what you strive to accomplish. What are you trying to do? What's your ambition? And we have a lot of strategic tools that can help you develop your theory of value. We're not going to get into that really today, but the important thing is to focus on solving the right problems, solving the problems that are really important to your group. And when faced with many problems, one of the things I'm going to talk about today is how you can not just solve problems, but collect them, look at them systemically, and solve the situation rather than just solving the problem. Okay, so these 3 dimensions of leadership afford us with the ability to make value in different ways, correct? We can improve our core, we can expand our role, or we can more successfully pursue our goal. So let me just ask you, maybe and probably you're already a strategic leader. Do you clear away obstacles for others so that they can reach their goals? Think about that. And the picture here depicts a young person with a physical obstacle, but you could clear away financial obstacles. You could clear away mental or psychological obstacles. You could clear away political obstacles. And again, you don't need to have the formal power to do this, but what might it be easy for you to do that's very difficult or really a blockage for someone else on your team, in your organization, or in your community? If you are clearing away those obstacles, if this is a natural way for you to behave, you're already exhibiting effective strategic leadership. Another question, do you think in terms of the way you want the future to be instead of the way things are now? And again, I don't think any of us expect the way things are exactly now to persist. We see that there are changes in politics, in science, in technology, and in the dynamics of competition. So we'll be seeing probably a considerable change. But some of us are, I'm afraid to say, living in sort of a boomerang mentality. They're hoping things go back to normal. And real strategic leaders move on to the next normal, are looking for a real view, a potential view of future scenarios. So to the extent you're time traveling out to a future that you'd like to help create, then you already are exhibiting effective strategic leadership. Now I've shifted the question a bit here. Instead of are you being a strategic leader, this is are you doing strategic leadership? And some of you may not think that distinction means much, but whether you are a leader or whether you practice strategic leadership, it's important to integrate those different parts of your behaviors, your mindsets, and your skills. So are some of the things you're doing this week or this month intended to create value in the future? If you're working so hard in the present and in the short term, and you're not also investing in activities today that create future value, then that's an opportunity where you can improve, where you can leverage your strategic leadership more. Another question that I can see you're all here, so of course you're open to learning, but are you also trying new things and taking, as I said, appropriate risk? And not just risk for the sake of risk, not just trying new things because of novelty, but focusing on linking that novelty to a performance focus, to either value creation. Perhaps if you're in the not-for-profit sector, it's more of an impact, corporate social responsibility, triple bottom line. However you're looking for your definition, your metric, are the activities you're undergoing to learn and to innovate and to experiment linked to that value. Because again, that's how strategic leaders, as we'll see for the rest of this hour, really prioritize and really decide what it is they're going to do and what they're not going to do. So let's get into some of the things you might want to be doing right now. Now, what I've been hearing, and you can see a picture here of someone who's really not liking what they're seeing. I hear a lot of, stop talking about strategic leadership, Trish. I just want to survive. Just let's get through this and out the other side, and then I can start thinking about strategy or leadership again. Some others are just trying to hold on to their current customers, no matter what. And that might mean sacrificing quality or price, or really rethinking what their business means in order to keep what they believe to be the most important thing, that customer. As I said, there's the boomerang mentality of just let's wait, things will get back to normal, then we can get back to doing business as usual. And then some other are really still frustrated and maybe even a little bit in denial. This can't be happening. This is a hoax, or this is not real, or this is not going to be as bad as they say, or just kind of the filters that are coming, are intersecting with the information you might be getting. Now, all of these things can be obstacles to being effective in strategic leadership. Okay? Moving to a survival mentality instead of a strategic mentality, focusing on customer retention and sacrificing other important elements of your business. None of these is as positive as we'd like to be. So let's flip this and let's look at some positive things you can actually do that can help get out of some of the negative thinking. And maybe it's not you with these thoughts, but it could be others on your team Perhaps could be your suppliers. It could be others that you interact with. And I'd like to give you a couple quick examples of some companies who didn't just hide their eyes, didn't just look at the world in a hopeful lens that things would get better quickly, but moved to exploit some opportunities, to take some appropriate risks, to do some things today to create value. And in this example, it's the Yum Brands company, and specifically Yum China Holdings. They control Kentucky Fried Chicken, which now goes by KFC, and Pizza Hut. And they are already trying out new business lines like catering, delivering raw food. They deliver raw steaks through the Pizza Hut chains in China, along with cooking instructions, so that their customers who would typically be ordering a pizza are now cooking at home. Okay. This is to boost some revenue, as the Chinese customers are no longer eating out amid the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this began in February. It was covered in the United States in some various news media in early mid-March. And to me, it's a good example of saying, here's the reality we face. What is the value we can create? What are the resources we have? We have supply of foods. What we don't have is customers who come into our sit-down restaurants. What can we do? Now, many of us have adapted very quickly to curbside service or to other types of delivery, to online classes as it comes to the University of Utah. Okay? But what I want to ask you is not what do you think of this idea, but what are you reading and watching? How are you looking at the world? Hopefully not through your fingers. Hopefully not through a screen of concern about survival or denial, but through an optimistic, informed perspective. Where can you see what others are doing, get more information faster about the way consumer preferences and technologies and industry supply chains are shifting, to be able to see pockets of opportunity? So a big part of when we say learning and looking to the future has to do with what you expose yourself to and how you have that dialogue with your team. What's your equivalent in your industry of an organization who's doing some experiments? You don't necessarily have to do the experiments. You can learn from what others are doing. What's this picture of? This is a vending machine for face masks. Is it futuristic? Well, they've already been installed in the Las Vegas airport here in Nevada, or over in Nevada. And this idea of how will people acquire and consume and also dispose of personal protective equipment is a big question. Now, maybe it doesn't impact your business. Maybe it does. Okay, what we're trying to do is to get our mindset into how can we create value and what can we learn about the environment. Here's another picture here, and what this is a full body kind of cleansing pod, a station, and these are in the Hong Kong airport, among other places, where an employee can go in and experience sort of a disinfectant and then go about their business. Now, how effective are these? How profitable are these? Some of you are already kind of calculating the financials. And I want to pull you back from that and say, if you just make decisions based on financials, you may actually have some successes, and we can point to many. But if you step back and you think about the long-term value to yourself, to your customers, to your community, what your ambition and your goal is, what role can you play in introducing new ideas or innovations or new opportunities to your team or your organization? And where are you in your core? Are you in an optimistic place where you're searching for new partnerships or new products? Or do you have to be really honest with yourself and say, actually, I'm coping with a lot right now, and I'm not ready for new innovations and new ideas. But there are ways I can still contribute to my team and to my organization. So what can you do now? At your core, well, first of all, consider, are you taking ownership for the things that are within your control. So much is beyond your control right now. And a lot of the conversations we're having are about what we don't know and what we can't control. I'd like you to flip that and make sure you're spending enough time on what you do know and what you can control. It might be very small. It might not seem like it makes that much difference, but I assure you it does. And a complementary experiment you can do is to find the edge of your comfort zone. Okay? Maybe you really don't tolerate ambiguity very well. Maybe this uncertainty is really wreaking havoc with the way you view your world, the way you do your job. We all have different comfort zones. And at the Goff Strategic Leadership Center, we don't say leap out of your comfort zone. We don't say leap and the net will appear. No, we have a different approach. We want you to know and be really self-aware about where your comfort zone ends, the edge of where you leave your confident, kind of robust, I know what I'm doing and I know how to do it, and start to move into not so sure here. Every year, good strategic leaders build out that comfort zone. And it doesn't have to be a time-based growth. It can be event-based. And this current pandemic, this current situation that we are facing globally is a wonderful opportunity to find the edges of your comfort zone and push yourself just a bit past them for the benefit of yourself, your team, and your organization. And these two things are activities you can do immediately. They're not costly, they're not risky. They're for you to consider and say, actually, are there some things that I could take more ownership of, step up? Are there some things where I can find the edge and step out? These are core activities, but I want to share something from Robert Kiyosaki. And if you don't know him, he's the Rich Dad, Poor Dad author. And you may not want to take a lot of risk, but for a long time, he's been saying in today's world, if you're not taking risk, you actually are taking risk because you're taking the risk of being left behind. You're taking the risk of missing out. Okay. So if you're avoiding rather than embracing risk, okay, if you're not really stepping up or stepping out, I would encourage you to explore why. And perhaps this is not the right time for you, put it on the shelf, and when you're ready, step up, step out. But if you're really honest with yourself and self-aware, and you're pushing yourself to be continuously learning, I hope you'll find some places where you can really try these small steps. Now in your role, here's some things you can do immediately. You can reach out to a teammate or a colleague who might be stuck and see if you can clear an obstacle. And as I said, these can be political, financial, psychological. Sometimes people just need a pep talk. It's not that everyone might need the same thing, but you might be in a privileged position to understand what's getting in the way of progress for your team, perhaps some of your customers, and others in your network. So reach out, make a little time, make a point of it, and there's, again, very little cost and very little risk. If they're not stuck, you can have a great dialogue. Perhaps there's something else that comes out of your outreach. The second activity that's sort of around your role is stop solving problems. Now that might sound odd, but instead of solving every problem as it comes at you, I would encourage you to collect problems. Rather than solve them as they arrive, collect them. And I'll tell a short story. There was a retailer who was getting a lot of complaints about very slow service time. Okay, so let's just say this retailer has online chat bots and call centers, but response time is slow and they're getting complaints. Now we could go solve that problem. And I'm sure many of you have much more expertise than I do in this area and could solve that problem cold. But another problem started to arise. Problem number 2 was large disparities in call center duration and performance. Okay, so some people who are working in let's say this is your company, are taking a long time to work with clients. Other calls are quite brief. And this is one of the metrics you watch and you see these disparities growing as opposed to sort of your target range. Okay, that's another problem you could solve. You can work with your call center employees. You can work on, why some of these calls are going long or are shorter than your optimal. But while you're let's assume you're trying to solve these problems as they come at you. Another one that comes in is you've got a lot of out of stock alerts on some really kind of hot items that are stockouts. So now you've got an inventory problem, you've got a call center duration problem, you've got a customer problem. Okay? What do strategic leaders do? They stop trying to solve the individual problems and they step back. Remember, you're trying to do things today that are going to have long-term value. That means you need to look systemically. That means you need to get perspective. And so whether it's your official formal role or not, you could step back and say, actually, are these problems related? Could they be? So some of you are probably already thinking a plausible way to recast this story is that perhaps some, but not all, call center employees were trying to move the customers from the out of stock items to other complementary or substitute items. So they're staying on the phones longer. So the out of stock is connected to the longer conversations, and the longer conversations are creating more long wait times, but your solution is now going to be different because you've recognized the connectivity, the interrelatedness of certain problems. And that is a skill that you can, some of you have it innately, but you can build that skill. Instead of reacting, reactiveness is not it's something you get rewarded for often in your career, but it's not necessarily the hallmark of a good strategic leader. You may actually want to be known for someone who stops, takes stock, and it's really hard when it seems that the world is chaotic and you need to be reacting quickly. So collect some problems, have some dialogue, and maybe even connect up these two activities. Work with the colleague to try to not just remove a blockage for them, but to see if perhaps there are some interrelated problems that you could find the root cause and then really unleash a lot more value. Some other things you can do to enable other success is to help a colleague build a skill. Are there things you know how to do that you can share your knowledge? Are there ways that you can use some downtime to help others build skills that'll be needed in the future? You can always shift from a me mindset to a we mindset. What's going to help all of us? What's better for the group? Create opportunities for others. Redefine your relationships. Okay? Sometimes we're too locked into saying, this person is in a different department. We make silos of our own, or we create a hierarchical barrier to conversations that might be helpful up and down the organization. Celebrate little successes. This is something that I learned from Jack Welch, but I have to say the power of just acknowledging people when they take a small step, a large step, they make a big victory, or they even recover from a little failure, really powerful. And practice active listening, okay? Especially on Zoom, especially when you're emailing a lot. What's the real message behind the words or the attitude? And can you do a better job of really hearing the whole message, really understanding the system, really unpacking the value of every interaction you have? Now we have 3 dimensions. I've already talked about 2 things we can do in our core, 2 things we can do in our role. So it won't surprise you that now I'm going to talk about 2 things you can do that have to do with your goal. Okay. And one is think about the future. Okay. Well, there's a technique that can open up a really interesting dialogue, and that's talking with others about what would have to be true for you to be successful in the future. For you to, in this case, deliver your value safely, right, to customers in the new next normal. What would have to be true? This isn't wishful thinking, because this process is called rolling back the future. But if you kind of time travel out to the future and say, what would have to be true that perhaps we have walk-in disinfectant booths like they have in the Hong Kong airport, or what would have to be true is that consumers would have to have assurances about cleanliness. But going through this exercise can help you to see how you might add more value or prevent value from being destroyed. And it's a nice way to get you past just saying, what's going to happen? What should we do? and focus the discussion a little more effectively. Another thing you can do that helps create value in uncertain times in particular is to think about new partnerships. Ask the question, who wins if you win? Who's looking for the same things you are? They don't necessarily have to be in your industry. Okay, so in an airport, a lot of people are focused right now on what's going on with the airlines, but there are also retailers and food service within the airport. There's airport parking structures, and there's many ancillary players, including hotels and tourism, and it goes on and on. But it's not to say I want you to build out how's everybody connected. I want you to think specifically about the value you create, the value you could create, and who wins if you do a great job at creating that value. A lot of times it's your employees, it's your own team, right? And this helps you reinforce that connective glue, that feeling that you're motivated to work together and to make strides, take some risk, okay? Maybe act more quickly than you otherwise would. So which of these 6 things will you choose to do? I hope you do at least one of them. Work to expand your comfort zone a little, clear an obstacle for someone, roll back the future. So hopefully each of you is thinking of at least one that you could really try. And then I'm going to ask you for one more thing though. Which of these 6 things will you inspire someone else to do? Okay, because it's not really about what you do as much as what you can motivate and inspire others to do. So imagine if you can get everyone on your team to find their edge and just move a little past their comfort zone. Maybe with embracing uncertainty or tolerating ambiguity. Maybe you can encourage someone else to start collecting problems instead of trying to solve each one that hits their desk. And you can see that person achieve a great deal more productivity and satisfaction in what they're doing, as opposed to feeling like they're playing whack-a-mole all day. So I really encourage you to think about any one of these things that you not only could do yourself, but that you could inspire someone else to do. And if you don't, then wake up tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, next week. Life always offers you a second chance. This is one of my favorite things because it's called tomorrow. Strategic leadership is a lifelong pursuit. None of us are perfect. Part of why I pursue it and why I study it and why I try to help others build skills is because I find it very difficult myself, but so rewarding when you do make strides to create more value and to motivate and inspire others to see that same vision you have and to build today for tomorrow's successful future. The last topic I'm going to talk about just for a few minutes now is how you prioritize. So I've said a lot. Okay? There are these 3 dimensions of strategic leadership: your core, your role, and your goal. There's things you can do right away in each of these areas. But as I hope you can see from today's presentation, in all these areas, there are deep skills. There's personal agility. There's ways of managing problems that can't be solved. There's the dynamic design of your organization structure and your compensation plans. There's many different things that really come with mastering strategic leadership. But rather than get any deeper into one of those topics right now, I've chosen to mostly focus my conclusion on prioritizing based on value. How do you decide what to do? What are you going to do now, today? What are you going to do next after that gets done? Do you envision your work as kind of a process flow, or are you solving problems in different areas? What will you never do? Because it's not part of your business model, because it's not part of what you stand for and who you are. We focus a lot on this, what we call now, next, or never, because many of us have a long to-do list. Okay? Often people come into programs that I work on and they have 27 strategic initiatives and 340 to-do items and project management software, and it's really impressive. But what do you do with the list? And what don't you do? So strategic leaders do a great job of editing their list. And again, you can already guess what they use to edit that: value. What activities are directly or indirectly linked to the value that I want to create in the future? And often the most urgent things that seem the most important are not the most important. The most important things are those strategic investments that will pay off down the line. Okay. So rolling back the future is a great technique for this. Okay. Put yourself in the mental headspace and think, okay, it's not May 20th, 2020, it's now 2022. Fast forward 2 years. What customers are you serving? What's the main source of value you provide to them? What are you doing now that you're going to be able to look back on in 2 years and say, boy, it's great that we did that. That partnership we built, those people that we built skills around, the customers that we really listened to. What is it that's going to help you be successful then? And what would have to be true? Are there technologies you need to adopt? Are there risks you need to take? Are there investments you need to make? And again, this is not an exercise you do in 2 minutes on YouTube, but it is an exercise that's worth doing. And if you can think of even one more thing that you can do or communicate or encourage someone else to do today to create value for tomorrow, then that should be at the top of your to-do list. Okay, that's the stuff you should be doing now. And often it's not that urgent crisis, the fire that's on your desk. I would even go so far as to say, never do easy urgent things. Okay. A lot of us right now is a very normal coping mechanism to try to do something that you feel mastery, that you know how to do. Okay. And especially if it's something that needs to be done now on a timetable. Sometimes those are the best things that you should be delegating so you can make more space for yourself to be thinking bigger picture. If those easy, urgent things tend to be a bunch of problems that keep coming at you, what are you going to do? You're going to stop solving them and start collecting them, reframe them, get back and solve that root problem so that you don't have this incessant customer complaints or manufacturing issues or wherever these urgent issues are coming from. Stop and think about, where are they coming from? How are you so busy every day with things that feel so that triggering you such a reaction? And some of them, maybe there is an ongoing sense of urgency and you're in the kind of industry where you need to be responding all the time. Well, then create some routines so that it's not different each time. Find the common issues, the root problems. Okay. This isn't kind of the normal way to think about your to-do list, but we do a lot of exercises with looking at the common threads through the way you spend time. We do analyses of your Outlook calendar and the time you have spent in recent weeks and months to try to help to see how you're making that most important investment of all, the investment of your time. Because when I say investment, I bet a lot of you think about financial investments, but often what I'm really thinking about when I say it in terms of strategic leadership, I'm thinking about the most valuable resource your company has, and that is your time and where you choose to focus your energy and your attention. So motivating yourself and others to create value, that should be the headline you take away. And maybe you're already doing it. If so, thank you for your patience in going through this, because maybe a lot of this was really review for you, was really just a reminder of the ways that you're already creating and capturing all kinds of value, even in times of uncertainty. So we committed to you to do about 45 minutes of content, and we're coming to the end of that. And I'd love to take your questions. I believe we probably have some already in the chat, and I think we have a moderator. I'm going to read out at least one or two of the questions and give you the best answers I can. Fortunately, I'm part of a great team, and if we can't answer things now live, we can always get some of our other faculty involved and send out more information to follow. Okay. Here's a question. Any suggestions for helping people around you think or see things more strategically? Day-to-day things when you can't do a training like this? That's a really great question, and I love where it comes from, because where it comes from is that you want to help people around you. So right away, it's a winning question. To see things more strategically, I find that one of the most useful things is to tell stories and to use examples of other companies and to see how kind of depersonalize it, as opposed to saying we need to think more strategically. Let's look at a company who was thinking longer term, was first out of the gate to make some experiments or investments, and look at how it's played out for them. They might have had some successes and failures, but it allows you to share that view and to have a discussion that doesn't immediately come into your own space. It's kind of threatening to talk about changing the way you're doing things and asking somebody to change their mindset. If you tell enough great stories and then the person themselves starts to think, wow, that really works, then they'll have some internal motivation, which you can supplement with your own encouragement and external motivation. The next question is, strategic leaders have to evaluate if a product is worth sunsetting. Managers tend to hold on to their project, even if it should be retired. Do I have any suggestions on communicating objectivity to their evaluation? This is a tough one, and often what we do is we try to say, let's look at everything we're investing in, and particularly things that have a long life. And not just, I think one of the key things here, and I love this question because it's so important to free up resources. Okay, one of your goals as a strategic leader is to take the resources you have and match them up with the opportunities in the environment. And we can all watch opportunities go past us all day long, but if we don't have any resources to attach to those opportunities, we miss the value creation potential. So casting the idea of sunsetting a project or divesting part of your business or stopping something that is lower margin in order to repurpose that investment in something that's higher margin. These are all easy to talk about, very hard to do. So first, as you have already done, acknowledge that there will be a human cost, that there will be some friction. Maybe there's a celebration of the project that's being sunsetted that allows the people involved to get closure and to move on to new things. Acknowledging the emotions as well as the logical piece, the objective and the subjective reasons for this. It's really important. But more importantly is helping the whole team see, where's that investment going to go? I'm always ready to give up what I've got if I'm going to drop it and get something better or different. But if I feel like I'm just dropping this and there's nothing next. So again, where are we going? Why are we doing this? How does putting this aside, this project, this product, this line of products, open up new opportunities, new growth? And where's the investment going to go? So again, it's stepping back and not just seeing this as one problem to solve. It's a systemic problem. There's psychological as well as financial risks involved. There's the need to acknowledge the human cost, and then also to make it really clear, where are you going to repurpose that investment? And then have a clear process. All the literature and work on change is very helpful here. And then I don't know if we can share some readings on some of these topics, but we'd be happy to. How can we realistically assess risk during our current pandemic situation? And this is way beyond me, I have to say. But I think to the extent I will respond, I would say that think about different types of risk. The financial risk is just one. There is strategic risk. There may be other types of risk that you need to be thinking about, reputational risk. If you can maintain your reputation and stand for what you stand for through it, you'll come out stronger even if financially you're weaker. So part of it is partitioning out and thinking about the types of risk, but how to assess the risk, I think is industry specific and organizationally specific. I would certainly encourage having really candid conversations and thinking about how much risk you're willing to tolerate, and is there a way you can share risk or mitigate risk? And again, we have a number of different kind of readings and tools in this area that go well beyond today. What suggestions do I have when the entire team is remote, not just with the current crisis, but always? And how can you be a strategic leader instead of a know-it-all when all communication is digital? Great questions. I can tell you've dealt with some of the same issues that I've seen over and over. One research-based suggestion when your team is virtual and you have difficult projects is to make a real distinction between if what you're doing is complicated or if what you're doing is complex. Okay? And that may sound like a trivial distinction, but it isn't. If what you're doing has a lot of moving parts, then there are some really clear processes to work virtually that have to do with almost sort of divide and conquer project management. If what you're doing is complex, if it's very interdependent and interrelated, you need to spend a lot more time up front building relationships and trust before you can say, okay, everyone take their part and get their work done. So again, there are a lot of wonderful research studies on this, and right now we're learning even more live in our workspaces every day. But when the entire team is remote, think about what kind of work you're trying to do and emphasize both the human communications and the filters and biases that you might have and the facts you think that you're transmitting. Okay. There are some very useful kind of drills and techniques you would do that I know you'd rather just like have business going on, but you might want to even say, let's just try, sharing information and see if we're all hearing it the same way. And what does it mean to you? If you're the nominal leader, if you're the formal leader, also letting yourself sit back, giving other people the chance to run a meeting, giving someone else the chance to set the agenda is also a good way for you to step back and not be the know-it-all, not feel like you're railroading people into your way of thinking. I think we have time for a couple more questions. What suggestions do you have for leading up and creating better alignment in an executive team that sometimes feels like they have competing goals that create difficulty prioritizing workflow? This is a situation that I actually developed a tool where every person in the team writes down their 5 top priorities. Okay. And then they also write down what they think everyone else's top 5 priorities are. And you go through and have a really candid discussion about whether they're accurate or not. And I try not to say right and wrong, but whether I'm accurate or not. So, and it could be, it's also a very useful exercise to do up and down in a hierarchy. So if I think that my boss is top priorities are 1 through 5, and I can share that and they can verify, yes, those are absolutely the priorities, then we're aligned. We're now, as long as they're not too broadly, if the priorities aren't, success, happiness, they have to be a bit concrete, a bit granular. But before you can start doing these types of exercises where you get people saying, what are your top 5? What do you think my top 5 are? That kind of thing. What you really need is to ensure that the team wants to succeed together. That there is a common vision of why you're there, that there is that goal, that ambition, that idea of what is value. If you can agree on what value is, then you can unpack, how do you think we'll get there? What's your mental model? Do you think if we do this, then this will happen? But again, it's an investment of time, and it feels terribly risky sometimes because you might find that there is misalignment, and then what do you do? Well, you work through it, because if you can keep that shared vision in mind, people find it's worth the investment to get alignment, to communicate better, to build trust, to tolerate the difficulties that get you to being a high-performing team. So I'd say emphasize a common vision and value definition. And if you don't have that, then that might be why you haven't been able to get that alignment. Some of you may have done the exercise at one point. Imagine a rope or a string laid on the ground. And we used to do this in person, back when we used to be in person. And we'd say, let's make the string smooth, aligned. And people would push on their little piece of the string, different areas. When you have a common vision, you're not pushing and pulling on the sides of the string. You're coming at the head of it and just snapping it taut. You're just, there it is. So once you have that common vision, that value-based direction that you're all facing, then a lot of the other things that may be getting in your way right now, it's not that they just go away, but now they can be reframed. And now you're going to solve the collection of problems instead of trying to solve one problem at a time. As the leader of an industry versus the leader of a team, how much time do you believe should be utilized researching the industry versus staying actively engaged and forward thinking about changing the industry? So this is really a question about how much do I want to understand today, because today's going to be over and I really want to understand tomorrow. And part of this is based on the industry. Industries with a long life cycle, slow change industries, I'm thinking of energy here as one of those. You really need to understand today quite well, because we have a lot of path dependence, we call it. You know, what we have today is definitely going to impact the near future, if not even the middle and longer term future. Some industries, though, are very discontinuous. What was going on yesterday is very different from even today or tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. So your decision about how much to understand and influence today's environment partly has to do with the nature of change in your industry. Okay. But I think what you might be getting at is something else here, which is how much time should you be spending in the future when you have to run today's business and you have to deal with today's stakeholders in today's industry? And we like to say that anybody who really is trying to be a strategic leader should be spending about 60% of their time in the future. And literally going to conferences about the future, modeling the future, talking to people about future partnerships, thinking about the way technology or pricing or product delivery will be in the future. 60% of your time, okay, 3 days a week. That is a lot. And when we look at highly effective strategic leaders, they are spending more of their time than the average. And many people who are heads of industries, heads of companies, are unfortunately spending 80% of their time in the present. Okay? And there aren't only two places you can go. You don't just have to be today and the future. You can be building that bridge to the future. And that's where we'd like to see you spending a lot of your time as well, is envisioning the future, getting out there, kind of time traveling out, and then rolling it back and building that bridge so you can get from where you are now to where you want to be in terms of who you hire, how you build skills, who you partner with, what kind of products you make, how you leverage technology, so many ways to create value. I'm scrolling through questions here. Thank you all for being so generous with your questions. I'm going to ask our team if I'm missing out anything. Emily, Mike, is there anything I'm missing that you're getting from another feed?
Dr. Gorman, I think there was one question here perhaps that didn't get answered. How can we realistically assess risk during our current pandemic situation?
Okay. Assessing risk is really a difficult question. Maybe I noticed it and I didn't answer it. I think part of this is to partition off your personal risk from your company's risk. And right now, I do see a lot of people who are looking at risk through so many different lenses. You know, what's it going to mean for my career? What might it mean for my family or my children? What might it mean for my state or my region? So a big part of it is assessing, first of all, what's the risk domain you'd like to look at? And if it's literally, will my company survive or not? Then I encourage you to shift that to how can my company survive and what would have to be true for survival. And it might mean taking on more debt than you are comfortable with. It might mean giving pay cuts to the top management. It might mean doing some things that are kind of off the table. But assessing the risk is make sure you assess the risk of doing nothing as you look at the risk of taking other actions. And to the point that I raised earlier, if you think that doing nothing is less risky, you could really be misreading the situation. Doing nothing during uncertainty is one of the most risky things you can do. Try small experiments, try to share risk with partners, think about who wins if you win and who might be willing to try an experiment with a new technology, a new delivery mechanism, any kind of solutions you have. You don't have to carry the burden alone. There are other companies and other players who may be willing to work with you because they win if you win, and they can see an alignment in terms of the value. Okay. I think that brings us to the top of the hour. This has been really interesting hearing your questions, and I'm really pleased that you've spent the time with us. We have a few things that we'd just like to say, if you could bear with us for another moment. We do have some, I feel like we've whet your appetite, and now we're leaving you with just the beginnings of some of our thinking. But we have some key takeaways. Everyone has the potential to be a strategic leader. Small actions do add up to big impact, and prioritizing your now, next, or what you'll never do based on value will have short and long-term benefits. We'll send around some slides if you communicate with the team that you'd like more from us. We have ongoing once a month meetups kind of like this, where we talk about topics. They're called slams. And on here is the website if you'd like to email us, or if you'd like to listen to podcasts about strategic leadership. We've teamed up with Workfront, and we're very happy to say we've done a number of podcasts about principles of strategic leadership and the future of work. We have a specific program coming up in June for 2 days. It'll be delivered online with a lot of interactivity and small group work on June 25th and 26th. And myself and my colleague Todd Zanger are the primary faculty for that program. I'd encourage you to continue your learning, whether it's with us in June, whether it's through the Goff Strategic Leadership Center, or whether it's through all the resources and knowledgeable experts out there. Keep learning and keep building your own strategic leadership skills and capabilities. I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike, if you have any final wrap.
Okay, no, Dr. Gorman, you did a fantastic job there. So I'm confident that each of you have learned some skills and additional knowledge that you can apply today, tomorrow, and into the future. And as Dr. Gorman just mentioned, we do have the 2-day class, which we call a blended model. So there'll be some live Zoom sessions just like this, where you'll have an opportunity to engage with Dr. Gorman as well as Dr. Zanger, as well as your cohorts, participants in that class. And again, that'll be June 25th and 26th. So if you have any questions about that class or any other questions, please feel free to drop us a note here at the David Eccles School of Business. So with that, we thank each of you for attending today's webinar, and we wish you the very best and hope to see you soon. All right, take care.